Alright guys, this is how I gained about 2 inches on my quadriceps. My quads went from about 24 inches to about 25.5 inches now, although my body fat percentage is significantly lower in these later photos than they are in the earlier photos. So back when I first started training, my legs were actually a relative strong part, but not long after, I think I tried squatting like 390 pounds. My hips just gave up. I really hurt them going for a 1 rep max there, and so I just stopped training them altogether. And then after a while they felt better and I could do leg training again, but I didn't want to do leg training because I didn't like training my legs. It just felt bad and it felt tiresome and I didn't really get much out of it, so I just decided to forego leg training for a couple years. This was back in about 2019 when I first started training. Fast forward to 2021 or 2022, I forget, either late 2021 or early 2022. I decided to enter my first bodybuilding competition or sign up for it, and then I realized that my legs were extremely underdeveloped compared to my upper body because I didn't train them at all. So as the competition ensued, I tried to gain muscle in my legs as best as I could, but it was still being overshadowed by my upper body. I just kind of accepted that. I was like, there's not much I can really do right now. This is just how I decided to train before, and I'm reaping the results of it, the negative consequences of it. So yeah, my legs weren't growing in proportion to my upper body. They were still basically not growing compared to my upper body. They weren't very primed for growth there. And then following the competition, I vowed to make my legs really big because it just seemed as though as I watch bodybuilding competitions, the legs are like the most important body part to grow. At the very least, like top 5, honestly, maybe even top 3. Like what's even above it? Like maybe shoulders, your back, and like those are the only ones I would say that might be above your quadriceps in terms of bodybuilding competitions. That you can argue quadriceps is even above all of those. So you could very easily argue that quadriceps are the most important muscle group to develop. So at some point I started training them really hard. I trained them like 3 times a week, but they still barely grew. At that point I realized, okay, I just have bad leg genetics for growth. They just don't want to grow like my upper body does. It's actually so bad that not only did the judges who, were judging my bodybuilding competition, I talked to them afterwards, they said that my legs were like the main reason I lost the competition, or like one of the main reasons I lost the competition. Not only did that happen, but people on Instagram and my YouTube page were making fun of me for having small legs. People would tell me it's very hypocritical how I'm making all these Instagram videos and like YouTube videos about leg strength, leg growth, and leg muscle when I didn't have that much leg muscle. And at some point I just kind of leaned into it. I was like, hey, you know what? Whatever. I don't have big legs. Let's make a bunch of jokes out of this. And I made a couple of reels about it.
You know what the worst muscle group to leg is? It's the legs. I have a very upper body dominant physique, and my legs have always been lagging behind, but that doesn't mean I don't train my legs. I train my legs more than I train my upper body at this point. Yet when I post a gym photo of me after a leg day, people often say, man, you have a wicked arm pump. Like, no, I don't have a wicked arm pump. I did legs today. So no matter what I do, my arms are going to totally overpower my legs. But what's the worst is when I actually do train legs, I go really hard, right? I go no reps in reserve. I'm like panting at the end of it. I'm sweating like a train. And then I look at myself the next day, look at myself the next weeks, look at myself the next months, and nothing happens. It does not grow. It refuses to grow. So not only are the legs the most taxing muscle group to work, they're also the muscle group that refuses to grow. Imagine you're talking to this girl. You buy her all the flowers, you give her all the niceties, you write all these fancy love poems, and she shows absolutely no reciprocity. That is my relationship with legs. Me and my legs are in an abusive relationship. I give him all the attention. I try and do everything for him, and he gives me nothing in response. That's how it feels like to work legs.
I'm in an abusive relationship. I gave her everything, and she gave me nothing.
When I was born, I was diagnosed with SLS, otherwise known as skinny leg syndrome. The doctors looked at me, ran their tests, then they looked at my parents with a cold look of disappointment and told them that I was destined to have skinny legs for the rest of my life.
But now in 2025, as I've been learning more about leg training, learn more about, how to, properly isolate my quads as best that they can, I've started to make some breakthroughs that have actually added about 2 inches to my leg size. First, what I did is I stopped using the classic barbell squat and I replaced it with the hack squat. My legs are comically long and my hip socket is sort of placed in a position wherein it likes to overcompensate for all my leg movements. And same with my glutes as well. They like to really take over all my leg movements when I try and do some leg exercises. Even if I use heel elevation to better bias my quads. And this makes it such that when I do the traditional barbell squat, my hips and my hips and my glutes really like to take over, and they just totally overpower everything. And when I look at myself in my form when I do the squats, it's very clear that my hips and my glutes are doing most of the work. I won't show images here, but you kind of see in the videos even that my hips and my glutes are doing a lot of the work. I have very muscular glutes when compared to my quads, and it's really off balance, especially for a guy. And I think that this is the reason why. Also, to give you some perspective on just how long my limbs in general are, not even just my legs, but my limbs in general are, I'm going to talk about my wingspan. My wingspan probably correlates with my leg length as well. I'm not sure exactly how well it correlates, but when you have long arms, you usually have long legs. So my wingspan, my wingspan is about 6'3", and my height is only about 5'9". Give or take like half an inch for both of those, but I definitely measured my wingspan when I was younger, and my wingspan is about 6'3", and my height has always been about 5'9" for the past 10 years of my life or so at this point. And again, there's good correlation between your arm's length and your leg length. So I think that there's good reason to believe that that's a good reason to give you some perspective on just how long my legs actually are. So yeah, squats were a no-go. Hack squats were much kinder to me. This exercise forced my glutes not to move, or at least not to move as much, and forced it not to take over the exercise. And this is because of the way your glutes are biomechanically positioned. They don't allow my glutes to, lean back and protrude and do some rounding in order to get some more stretch and whatever. I'm also able to keep my feet more close in. When your feet are further out, then it works on your hips more. But I was able to keep my hips really close in when I do hack squats. And this is because I can sort of position my with the way that the bar moves down, I can do it much more easily. The way that the machine guides you down, it allows you to keep your chest up the whole time as well. And I always had trouble keeping my chest up when I did squats. And yeah, again, because my glutes don't have the ability to protrude outwards, it makes this movement much more comfortable for me. Because I don't want a big dump truck as a guy, I want big quad sweeps as a guy. Unless you really like doing the barbell squat for whatever reason, that I actually recommend that most people just do a hack squat instead if your goal is to get quad hypertrophy. The squats are a much better leg builder in that they're going to correlate with a bunch of other stuff, like they're going to get you better glutes and get you better hamstrings, of course, better hips, of course. And if you want to do stuff like Olympic weightlifting, if you're into just general athletics, then squats are probably a better option for you. But if your goal is pure quad hypertrophy, you want to get that massive quad sweep, then this is the best thing to do. Second thing I did is I focused my focus more now on the leg press than I did on the Bulgarian split squats. Because if you watch some of my older videos, I used to do Bulgarian split squats a lot. I used to incorporate that as a major part of my exercise routine. I still incorporate it a little bit, but I put a lot of that focus that I had on the split squats into, and the lunges sort of movement, into more of a leg press sort of movement. So to be clear, the Bulgarian split squat is one of the best exercises for your legs in general. I think it's right up there with the squats, honestly. And I'm specifically talking about quadricep hypertrophy. It's extremely easy to get your hamstrings and your glutes involved when you're doing lunge movements compared to if you're just doing leg pressing movements. I chose the leg press because it's actually a very similar movement to the hack squat, only I'm doing it at a slightly different angle. So I want to get all these pressing movements that I can get done, which will work on my quad sweep, and at all the angles I can get them at. I would probably prefer doing the pendulum squat if I could, if it was at my gym, but the leg press is probably the next best thing I can hope for, honestly. So I'm not complaining about that. It can still be really good if you do it correctly. And how I do it is I put my legs towards the bottom of the press, and I try to keep my legs closer together, so at the bottom and close together, and I just start sort of push my legs back and forward, and I do the exercise that way. This will put a slight greater bias on the quads compared to the glutes and hamstrings if you were to put your legs really high at the top or really far spread out. The next thing I did, which is actually related to what I was talking about, is I incorporated deeper ranges of motion. This one does come with kind of an asterisk, because as I became more aware of my body, I realized that sometimes I go really deep into really deep ranges of motion. I'm not actually working my quads as much anymore. I'm working at my glutes and hamstrings a lot, particularly my glutes a lot. So when I did super deep barbell squats, and when I did deep leg presses, I would sometimes feel it in my glutes getting really stretched out and really getting a really good pump and pushing. But when I do hack squats, thankfully, my glutes cannot move. like I said before, they're not in a biomechanically advantageous position to move and do all the work. So I go as deep as I can on the hack squats, and I've noticed that as I do that, it feels a lot better and I get a lot more quad stimulus. And like I said with the leg press, put your legs really far down and try to put your legs closer together and then push off that way. That'll minimize the involvement of other stuff as well. And when I do Bulgarian split squats, I try and have a shorter stance, because the longer your stance is, then the more your glutes and hamstrings are stretched and the more they are likely to be incorporated in the movement. Whereas if you have a slightly shorter stance, then it'll focus a bit more on your quads that way. What this will all do is it'll lower the weight that you can use quite a bit, most likely. A lot of powerlifters, they end up using wider stances because you can engage more of your hips and more of your glutes and everything. But we're not trying to lift as much weight as possible. We're trying to engage our muscles as best we can. Your muscles don't actually know the difference between 510 pounds and like 315 pounds. All they know is how much they're being worked. I heard this quote from someone, I don't know who it was from, but it was like, powerlifting is trying to make heavyweight look light, and then bodybuilding is trying to make lightweight look heavy. And I think that's a very perfect summation of what we're trying to do here. One more thing to note about this though is that I like to not really lock out at the top, because I notice that when I lock out, I'm not exactly really using my quads too much. I end up like pushing through my hamstrings a lot to get that last little 10 or 15% out. So what I try and do is I try and just keep tension on my quads and just go up to like 90-85% and then go down again, and then 90-85%, go down again, 90-85%, go down, and then of course on the last one I go all the way up. But before that I just go 90-80% up, and that seems to be putting better tension on my quads as opposed to wasting energy going up at the very top and then getting my hamstrings involved. Next step here is to use the leg extensions. I actually used to skip the leg extensions a lot before I realized this. I just think it's not that big of a deal, it's just like a sort of thing you do at the end, it's whatever. I kind of half-assed it, or I didn't even really do it properly all the time actually. But no, you should take it seriously. It's a part of your quads that are not really worked with any other exercise, but the leg extension seems to work it very well. Particularly the leg extension when you put your back really far back and you start to get the really big stretch in your quads. It works in your rectus femoris really well. And if you don't know, the rectus femoris is like the muscle inside your quad that gives it a bit more depth and definition. It gives you that really nice inner detail in the quads. So yeah, it doesn't help with the quad sweep much, admittedly, which is the part that we're most concerned with, but it's good to have a more to have more definition in your quads in general, and this will help with that. It's really important for the overall leg aesthetic, I think. The next thing I want to talk about here, which is actually the first thing that I actually do in my workouts, but I forgot to talk about till now, is I like to do my hamstring curls first thing, in seated hamstring curls specifically, first thing in the workout. This really gets my knees warmed. It helps my knees go through a bunch of range of motion. That way, when I get to the actual leg pressing stuff and the hack squat stuff, that I don't have to warm up my knees. Because oftentimes in the first set of my exercises, I end up like warming up my knees pretty much, where I'm just sort of doing the exercise, but I know that I can't go as hard as I usually can go, because my knees are still being warmed up and I can't go too heavy on them and too hard on them. And of course, your hamstrings are hardly ever worked when you're squatting and when you're leg pressing. They arguably are a bit if you do it correctly, if you do it a certain way, but it's at least not worked in the same kind of way, which will make sure that your hamstrings aren't pre-fatigued for your hamstrings don't pre-fatigue you for the leg pressing and the squatting that we're going to be doing. And of course, it's just good to get in some hamstring work and get bigger hamstrings in general. So right now my legs look okay. They don't look like great. They aren't like my best body part or anything, but I at least don't think that they're some kind of extreme glaring weakness anymore. And I think that's good enough for me. That's the best I could hope for right now. Hopefully the next coming years that will not be the case. I can get to be one of my strengths, because I think that having strong legs is probably the best thing you can do for long-term investment when it comes to bodybuilding or when it comes to just your health in general. My legs are really important. I've been really focusing on that. This has been my focus for the past year or two at this point, and it's still something I'm working on. So hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys were able to learn something from this, and I'll catch you all next time. All right, peace.